Thank you everyone for joining, and just to remind that please ask questions during the call as well. I try to answer them during the presentation, but yeah. So today we're talking about Fabric shortcuts and how they will be enhanced in data architecture and integrations. So I'm here to demonstrate the single best feature of Fabric, at least in my opinion. I'm talking about zero-copy real-time integration with a setup of under 10 clicks that will unify data access across domains, workspaces. It even works across different clouds, including AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, and more. This will enable organizations to unify their data access with seamless data sharing. After this session, I hope that you will understand what problems can be solved with shortcuts. We will go through different cases where shortcuts are the best solution. You will have a grasp of the technology behind the shortcuts and how to use them in your architecture. I will explain the technology, and then we will go through real-life examples on how I have been using them during my ventures. And then you will also get understanding on how to create and manage your shortcuts. I will be showing the basic user interface flow, and then we will also have a bit more technical way of doing them with code. And then Microsoft just announced how they can be deployed at the moment with deployment pipelines, so we will also demonstrate that. Then shortly, so I'm Juho Jääskeläinen, working as a senior data engineer consultant here at FellowMind. I'm also product owner of Fabric, so it's my job to be on top of things that came with this technology. I have been working with the technology since its release, and I currently have at least 7 data platforms built on Fabric that are in production use, and I think next month it's going to be my 8th. And I'm very passionate about technology and always trying to learn something new. But then, when you need to convince your stakeholders, let's talk a bit about business problems and what kind of things shortcuts can alleviate with you. So the first thing is that it's eases the data management. They simplify and enhance your management by automating processes and improving efficiency. They streamline a lot of data processes and reduce the time and effort required for the integration and data management. With the improved efficiency, as we can provide a no-code alternative to building complex pipelines for sourcing data from external storage, Fabric shortcuts can help offset development and operational costs. They also unify data access, as they enable organizations to unify different sources and domains more seamlessly. Then as the shortcuts are symbolic links, they also reduce data copies. So now you don't need to have duplicate data just to give access to certain amounts of data. You can just give access to the data with a shortcut. And shortcuts are also real time, which means that everyone has the same state of matter, so to say. And they can also help you with development, especially when you need to hydrate your development environments or testing environments or whatnot. So the first thing you need to know is that how to differentiate between shortcut and a real table. This also works with files, but you can see there is this little, I would say it's a chain icon. It's quite small, so have your eyes open for that. But that tells you that, okay, this is now a shortcut and not a kind of like real table. As a concept, you can think shortcuts as a pointer or reference to another storage location. The location can be inside of Fabric, or it can be a file, folder, or a table. For the user, the shortcut object, it works just as just like the real table or a file would work. So the experience is the same. Now remember that the shortcut itself is independent from the underlying data. So if you delete the shortcut, it only deletes the link to that data and doesn't delete the data itself. However, with shortcuts, you can also alter the data in the root. So be careful if you write to places that you shouldn't, because that will cascade all the way. And next, we're going to show you the basic demo. So here I am in my Fabric environment, and what I now want to do is I want to have more data to my bronze lakehouse. So I navigate to my lakehouse, and as you can see, I already have quite a few tables here, but I think I'm missing at least a date this time. So now from the 3 dots, they can be found from both the tables and then the files. Here, click that one and then a new shortcut. And this will open this wizard. And now I know that my ERP data is in the one lake, so I'll pick that one. And then I have been naming it nice, so I have ERP data. We go next, and then let's see what is available here. Okay, so we want to bring, I think, date and maybe customer and the country as well. And then next, and what you can now do is you can rename this. So let's say I want to know where my data comes from. So I'll rename them. And then click create. And now with just a few clicks, I have now created a whole integration, and I can now use my tables just like they would be here. Then one thing, or some new things. First of all, let's check that there is this properties, and this is at the moment the only place you can kind of see that where this is targeting at the moment. So there is this shortcut target property here, and this will tell you where this shortcut is pointing to. And it unfortunately is the absolute abate, so not very readable, but well, at least you have something. But then there is this new manage shortcut icon here, and what this does is that we can now actually change our name and where this points to. So previously, if you wanted to change your shortcuts, you needed to drop them and recreate them, but now you have this management place, and you can also switch it to not point to the tables, but you could make it point also to the files section, for example. So now you can also manage it. And then I have to also show one cool thing as well. So in here I have shortcutted something from outside of Fabric. So if I open the settings, I have this shortcut connection here, and it's pointing to this Azure Data Lake storage. And what I can now do is I could replace this with another connection. Let's say I was now working in test environment and I would have a test out of this. I could just reuse this or change it from here, and that would point all of my shortcuts to that endpoint. So that's about that. I assume there is no questions, as at least the chat is still empty. Okay, let's continue then. Yeah. Let's take a little bit a deeper dive into the technical aspects of how they function. So first of all, the outside of Fabric shortcut supports is now for ADLS Gen 2. So the normal blob storage doesn't cut it, so you need to have the hierarchical namespace enabled. Then also Amazon S3 and all S3 compatible file services, and then Google Cloud Storage and Dataverse are at the moment those that are supported. And then inside Fabric, as a source, you can shortcut KQL, lakehouse, mirrored Azure Databricks catalogs, mirrored databases, semantic models, SQL databases, warehouses, and warehouse snapshots. And one thing to keep in mind is that inside and outside of Fabric, shortcuts have a bit different authentication schema, as outside of Fabric use the connection as authentication, while inside are always go with the user rights. Then there is also one differentiation between these shortcuts. So outside of Fabric workspace, the read and write access can be made with ADLS Gen 2. So you can write to the storage account, and then here I have listed all the different authentication schemas, and I have highlighted the one that I would recommend using for in case of ADLS Gen 2. I would use the workspace identity as it has the least amount of management, let's say it like this. Then on the Dataverse side, you only have the organizational account, which is a bit problematic, as it will now authorize your user thousands of times over a month or so. So that might look a bit weird, at least from the security point of view. Then all the S3 things need to use access keys, and that cannot be at the moment picked from a key vault, so you need to actually put it here. And same goes with the Google Cloud Storage. One interesting thing is that all S3 compatible services work. So that this means that basically, if you would be able to get a S3 compatible file service running on your local machine or your whatever database you have or something like that in some cloud, you can basically shortcut that also to Fabric. So this might be interesting if you have those legacy systems. And you can also connect to this with the on-premise gateway. So if you need to have on-premise data, shortcut it. Then with outside of Fabric shortcuts, there is this problem that it takes a lot of network. So Microsoft came up with caching. So this is a thing that you need to set up at the workspace level. And how this works is that when the file is first read, it's saved into cache, and then all those subsequent runs to those files use the cache data. And the cache has this intelligence that if the file has changes after it was cached, it will refetch that file. But if it didn't, then it will just bring it from the cache. So that's quite nice. There are some settings like how long time those files will be held in the cache, and then maximum size of one file in the cache is 1 gigabyte. For example, Delta tables. This might not be a problem because big tables are put in the bunch of smaller files. So you could, in theory, at least have like very huge tables as long as they don't have files that are over 1 gigabyte in the cache. Yeah, then I mentioned already, but all the access schemas outside of Fabric are basically global because they are based on the connections. And next we're going to talk a bit more about the access control overall. So within the OneLake, the access is always tied to your account or the account that is running the code. Which might not be a good thing always, but that's the state of the art today. So for you to be able to create a shortcut, you need to have a write permission on the lakehouse that you're creating the shortcut in. And then Microsoft talks about target, which means the place where you are picking the data up. I usually call it root or source, but in this, let's talk about target now, because that's what is used on the documentation. So then to create the shortcut, you need to have read all access on the target. And same when you want to read the data, you need to have the read all on also on the target and not just on the lakehouse. And if you need to have write to that, then you need to have write also on the target, because it will, like I mentioned before, it will write it. So on the example I just did, if you want to write on those ERP tables from the data platform, it would actually write it on the ERP workspace. And then one interesting thing here is that if you use the SQL endpoint, you actually don't need to have read all access to your lakehouse. Only read access is sufficient, and I'll have a short picture here what that could mean if you really like to leverage it. And here's the differentiation, because SQL and Spark have different schemas. So you can create, or like what you need in order to create a shortcut is that for SQL you need write, and on the Spark you need read all on the target and then write on the lakehouse. And but the interesting thing here is that in order to read data, you only need read on the final lakehouse. While if you want to do it with Spark, you need to have the read on the original source of lakehouse. And here's a little picture how you can how wild you can make these access control schemes. So in this example, we have a legacy data source containing sensitive and non-sensitive data, and we want to separate our two data into consuming data platforms so that the non-sensitive goes to the common data platform and the sensitive has its own data platform. Here we do it by chaining shortcuts, and with that we can create this access policy and still only shortcut once from the source. In the example here, the admin user must create the shortcuts and tables on the landing workspace and then give right personnel access to the right lakehouses so then they can take care of their data needs. So the data engineers have contributors on the data platform workspace and no access on the landing except read all access on the raw lakehouse. And in this case, you cannot use Spark to read data from these shortcuts, as it would try to authenticate it all the way to the bottom. But they can use SQL endpoint to fetch the data. Then in the future, there is this OneLake security that is in private preview, and that might give us more access control, so that this kind of so that this won't be as complex to handle at the moment as it is now. Okay, then let's talk about how you can use or leverage shortcuts in the architecture. And the first example here is leveraging shortcuts when mixing lakehouses and warehouses. Very basic example. So now if you want to do your data transformations with a warehouse, but for some reason you have some kind of like weird JSON or something that you want to handle before and have it on the lakehouse, or you want to leverage a lot of shortcuts for interesting data, what you can do now is that you shortcut those tables to a lakehouse within the same workspace as your warehouse, and then you can do a cross workspace queries on top of the warehouse to get access to those data. And just remember here that use the 3-point naming when doing cross workspace queries. Then the same idea, but the other way around. So you can also shortcut tables from warehouse to lakehouse and then do something with Spark on top of it. And then the last mix and matching, which is the KQL and shortcuts. So you can shortcut to KQL just like you can to a lakehouse, and then you can either do it with the UI, or then you can do this .create or alter external table, and that will create a connection for you. And then one thing to note is that when you query those external tables or use them, you need to use this external table function, and that will fetch the data from those shortcuts. One example use case could be like you have some web usage data, and then you have contract data that doesn't change that much, but the web usage is real time, and you want to calculate pricing or on real time on top of the usage. So what you could do then is that you have the KQL table, and then you bring the prices from the stationery with shortcuts and do that on top of it. Then my opinions on rethinking integration and data loads. Whenever feasible, I say shortcut is the go-to solution because it's real time, up to date, easy to set up, and from the user's perspective, there is no integration. It's just as the data would be already inside whatever endpoint you're using. But then you also want to have a structure in your data platform, but also speed and efficiency. For example, in many cases, I have ended up is that 3 layers of medallion is a bit maybe too much. We don't need that many transformation layers. But some of our data might actually need that. But then to have a good structure, all data should come from the rawest layer and always move forward to the purest layers. And I think that data should never skip a layer. But this is where the shortcuts can now help us. That instead of like bringing it as a whole table, we just shortcutted it, and that's the way our data moves from silver to gold in case we don't need to have transformations. And now what this brings us is that then at some point the gold data becomes so big that you now actually need to have aggregations on it. Then you just need to remove the shortcut and add a notebook or whatever you do to transform it or aggregate it, and then the end users won't notice, and it's very easy. And then someone asked, would you still recommend shortcuts on on-prem Dataverse and similar sources where the compute isn't always that flexible? Yes, to a point. Obviously, you always need to do a little bit of math that how much this would cost. And then if that calculation makes sense, then yes. But if it doesn't make, let's say, for example, Fabric link is an excellent thing, but if you have like a huge amount of data, it might be too expensive. Okay, and thanks for the first question. Then something we have been heavily using is that we only load from the source system only once. So we save up source system, we save up hydration things, and make everything maybe a bit easier. So we have one workspace where we ingest all the data from the source systems, and now all of our environments can use the same data, and there is no integration, no lag, nothing. And this same could be applied to a mesh design, which I have an example a bit later. Then a bit of thought about how this affects the medallion or how you approach it. So what shortcuts can really do is improve the data flow within the medallion architecture, leading to more efficient processes. So you don't need to often you don't, every table doesn't need all the steps, so you can skip them, but you do it with shortcuts, so you still have the good structure, and at some point if you need the transformation, you still have the opportunity to do it. Then governance enhancement. So implementing shortcuts will enhance your governance and ensure better data management and compliances. And then I have already talked about this layers. And this is again another example on and don't skip layers. So we have a huge fact table and several smaller fact and dimension tables. And for the huge table, we need to have a aggregation for our Power BI. So what we now do is we bring all the smaller ones. The small fry comes with a shortcut to the last layer, and then the big table comes with the notebook. Hey, we have a question.
2 questions, all right.
Would you recommend separate workspaces only for storage, kind of like zones, and then just shortcut from any zone into dev test? Yeah, I would recommend having a separate workspace per source because that gives you more control. At the moment in Fabric, the workspace is the best place to have a kind of like access control. So that's why differentiating between different source systems to their separate workspaces is a good solution. Then, if shortcuts are changed, like in your example, though, different lakehouses, warehouses, etc., isn't there a risk it stresses the source system unnecessarily? I am not sure what we are talking about here. So, basically, a shortcut is a reference to the original table. So, what kind of like how you can think about it, let's say I have changed this one table 5 times in a row. What that basically means is that from any of these 5 stages, I can pull the data from the source. So if I do it on the 5th place, it doesn't query it like 5 times. It just goes through the shortcut chain, like, oh, the data is here. No, it's not. It's pointing here. No, it's not. It's pointing here, and so on until it's there, and then it pulls it up. So in that case, it shouldn't affect the source system. Then something a bit trendy is the data mesh or the data domain thinking. So if you're not familiar with data mesh, it emphasizes on decentralizing the data ownership and enabling teams to manage their own data domains effectively, and it's based on this domain-driven design where they try to align software design with business domains to enhance collaboration and data accessibility. And then anyone who have worked in these environments will notice that it's very, very nice as an idea, but it's quite hard to implement in action because the data is scattered across multiple places, and organizing all of that can be very, very challenging. But shortcuts can help with this. So here's one kind of hybrid structure where you can still have this domain thinking, but what you still will have is this common data platform where all the hard work kind of like is made. So what happens here is that the common data platform handles all the loads and some basic transformations, and then but still marketing, HR, and finance, and whatever department you choose can now shortcut from this common place and create their own data products on top of that, and why not shortcut from each other as well. So let's say finance needs something from the HR, then they can also shortcut that. But this is like a really good way that shortcuts help with this data mesh design, because it allows you to have the one table made one time and then shared between different things multiple times. Then how shortcuts can help you with CI/CD. So they streamline those CI/CD practices by enabling developers to integrate changes effectively and automate deployment process. If you have with shortcuts, you don't need to move data when going on to higher environments. This is the same example we shown previously. And then the final icing on the cake is the branch-based development and shortcuts. So if you have been doing like how I like it, so data is flowing from one side to the next and doesn't skip layers. When you do branch-based development, you now have a very nice way to hydrate your environment. So how Fabric's branch is now working is that each branch should have its own workspace, and that's it. The problem here is that if you create a lakehouse, nothing comes with it, so there is no data or nothing, and you want to develop on top of data. So this is where what you could use here. So let's say we make a notebook on our development branch that is reading from the bronze layer, and now we have an empty bronze layer. What we can do now is shortcut all the tables from our main workspace, and now we have all the data available that we need for our debugging, and it's up to date. And then when we PR our branch and close the thing, we can just destroy our environment and it will still work. One pitfall here is that you can write the shortcut, and that could cascade all the way to the, let's say in this structure, it could cascade first to the main workspace, and from there all the way to the raw workspace, which could be your ERP data. So be careful with that, and that's why it's a good idea to have data only flowing in one direction. Then let's have a little bit more demos. So, and someone asked that, do you have any experience with programmatically creating shortcuts? Short answer, yes, and you will also have very soon, or at least have seen how it's done. So this is the architecture that is available now with deployment pipelines to your shortcuts, and also Git sync also can now do this architecture. So in this case, we have a dev and test that are being deployed, and the raw is as it is, it doesn't change. So shortcuts within the environment, they work as they're supposed to. So the silver shortcuts will point to those in the test, but then if you have outside of workspace shortcuts, this only can point to the same one out of the box. So you need to consider this so you don't make anything. Let's say you have an ERP system and you want to have it 3 different versions of the ERP, and prod needs to read from production. Now, if you would just deploy everything, you accidentally will have your production data platform read from the development, which is not optimal, I would say. Okay, let's go back to our Fabric workspace. I'm going to go to my dev environment, and you noticed we just created some new shortcuts. So let's see how now this looks in the deployment pipeline. How you get the deployment pipeline is you go to workspaces, and then all the way in the bottom you have this deployment pipelines, and from here you have something nice. I have already set this up, but yeah. Now there is this nice little button here. It's gonna, when you first go here, it's gonna have a wheel of death for a while, but then you can see what kind of changes do you have, and let's now see what is actually happening here. So if you did deployment previously, you knew that with lakehouse deployment, the only thing that came with it was the name. And now a few weeks back, they added shortcuts as well, and they come with this. Can I get this? It comes with the shortcut.metadata.json file. If you have Git sync with your workspace, you can actually go and see that there is actually this kind of file within the folder structure. And this now has all the shortcuts that I have in my Franz lakehouse. And as you can see, there's quite a many. And then what I also have here is something within the silver. So with this, what should happen now is that the silver ones are pointing to the bronze ones, so they should change their source because they are within the same workspace. But let's just deploy that and hope everything works. Now, like I mentioned previously, if you have this kind of structure that you need to change the outside of workspace shortcuts to a different environment within your deployment, then you cannot deploy everything, but you need to cherry pick here what you want to deploy. So let's say I don't want to deploy any of my lake houses. I just want to have my code. So then I can cherry pick what I'm doing. Now would be a great time to have some questions. Oh, finally. Good thing it didn't get that awkward. So let's go to my test workspace now. And we can probably see that we have nothing here. And that is because I have not refreshed this. So, haha, now we have something. So this is a pro tip: if always refresh from this button, and then you have things probably working. If we want to now check this, I hope you believe me, but this is now pointing to my ERP data lakehouse. And then someone asked, have you tried Fabric variable libraries to manage and control shortcut target paths? And I have not, because it's not available at the moment. On the Las Vegas, they showed that it would be the way how you could deploy it, but it's not at the moment at least supported, which is a shame. I'll have a short talk about also what's coming up in the later stage. But then from the silver, we can also see that we got all our shortcuts, and they are actually pointing to this. So the first part is the workspace ID, and we can see it also from our URL that they match. So this worked as well. So that's nice to know. Then let's talk.
The question.
Hmm?
If you have the time, I have a question. If you have tried using Fabric variable libraries to manage and control shortcuts, target paths?
Yeah, it's not available at the moment. I think on the Las Vegas FabCon they made a demonstration on it. That's how you should, or that's how they are gonna handle it in the future. But that is not available at the moment. So maybe my presentation is outdated already next week, and they make it available. But no, that's not available now.
It's on Fabric, so it's going to be outdated in the next second. So that's
cool. That's yes. Yeah, my demos have. Yeah, the deployment pipeline has been available now for 3 weeks, maybe. Okay. Then let's quickly first look what I'm gonna showcase to you. So now we're gonna do the Git sync demo, and this is the structure that we are aiming at here. So I now have a feature where I want to pull data from Silver, develop a notebook, and then write it to the code table. and I have initialized a feature branch already for me. So I have everything, all the lakehouses and notebooks that have been made previously on the main, but now I need to have to develop something on top of the Silver. And I don't want to run everything here just to hydrate my environment. Let's say you have some like huge environment with the billions of rows. You don't really want to run everything just to make one notebook. So what we're going to now do is that we're going to programmatically shortcut all the tables that are in the Silver Lakehouse of our main workspace to our Silver Lakehouse in the feature branch, and then we can develop on top of that. So I'm here in my feature branch that is within the source control. We have this. We are in the feature branch as well. And how I'll now initialize this is with code. So first we set up what's the workspace that we want to fetch the data from, and then we use these notebook utils. Let's zoom a bit. Then we use these notebook utils to fetch different kinds of IDs that we need because the main ingredient here is this API. So there is this shortcut API available within the Lakehouse, and when you make calls to that, you can create shortcuts, you can get shortcuts. And then one thing I want to mention is that there is this parameter shortcut conflict policy. So you can adjust the behavior, how it works in cases if you already have a shortcut that if you have tables that exist already, so do we want to overwrite them? Do we want to abort? This is the default one. And then, or do we want to, in case we have a same name, do we just want to make a new one with _1, I think it comes as, or do we only want to create those in case we already have it? So we want to overwrite those that already exist. Then maybe a bit about the syntax. So what we need here is we need to have a table name, then the path to it, and then the target, as mentioned previously, where it's pointing to. All the type will be on one lake as it's to the main workspace, and then you need some item IDs and then workspace IDs, and then also the path here. And now if everything goes as we want, this should now compile and create shortcuts for me. And this 201 response means that my request to creating the shortcut has been accepted, and it now creates a process that creates the shortcut. And then just to demonstrate, we can also list all the shortcuts within this same lakehouse, and we can see that, hey, we actually have something here. And now if we would go here on the Silver Lakehouse, it should probably showcase that we have a to unidentified. Oh yeah, so we have demo table 1 and demo table 2. So that's nice. Then maybe just quickly, let's run this again. So now it would try to overwrite them, but the default behavior is the abort. So it gives you this 409, and yeah, we already have it. So no can do. Any questions about the demo? All right. Then in the future, as I don't work for Microsoft, I cannot guarantee anything, but I have a hunch that with what is the directions we're gonna go through. I think the deployment pipeline and the KitSync are gonna have more flexible support for the shortcut deployment. It's either gonna be with variable libraries shortcut connection or then something new. But I think the time where we create shortcuts with code will be behind us at some point. Then the new feature, the one lake security, which will enable more precise control, especially for Spark. So it will harmonize the access control so that Spark and SQL will use the same access control. And this will give us a lot more control, and we don't have to have so absurd things as showcased previously. And then when the lakehouse with schemas will go to GA, that will allow us to create a whole schema of shortcuts at a time, so that can speed up things if you do them from the UI. And that is my presentation. Thank you very much. And I think we have now time for questions. Someone asked, if you use shortcuts on your customers, could you share your experience, pros, cons, performance, what the customer use case was ish? I think, well, maybe I'm a bit biased, but I think shortcut is one of my favorite features of Fabric, and they work well. I have not had issues. The biggest issue using shortcuts is when you have a let's say you have 100 shortcuts in a lakehouse and you need to deploy it to the next environment. Now certain architectures come with the deployment pipeline. Few months ago nothing came with it, so then you needed to do it with code. But you know, once you have done the coding exercise, it's quite fast, and so that's probably the biggest setback that I have experienced with the shortcuts. Then also I think one thing that maybe the most secure customers won't like is that you need to put these access keys by hand into some UI somewhere. I think that might be a bit of red flag to some extent.